everybody, this is your girl Nikki Beware back for another episode of hashtag I Am. Before we get started, I want to correct a couple of mistakes that I made in the last episode. Someone so graciously pointed out to me that I mispronounced the name of Greenwich. It's actually pronounced Greenwich. Also, the official ruling of Blessing Olusegun's death was in May of 2022, not March. I somehow got those 2 months mixed up and just wanted to correct that. All right, let's get started. Sofia Lucerno Juarez was born on February 5th, 1998, to Maria Juarez and Andres Gutierrez Abraham. I couldn't find anything on Sofia's father, but it said that he wasn't active in her life. In fact, he denied that Sofia was his child and had never even met his daughter. That left Maria and Sofia to navigate the world on their own until they eventually settled in Kennewick, Washington, with Maria's mother, Ignacia Prado Juarez, her mother's boyfriend, Jose Lopez Torres, and her 6 brothers and sisters. To say that their home was a little more than crowded would be an understatement, but the Juarez family didn't mind at all. They were close-knit and loved each other immensely. February 4th, 2003, Sofia was excitedly waiting on the next day to arrive. She could hardly contain her excitement because the family had quite the day planned to celebrate the momentous milestone of her turning the Big Five. Later on that night, around 8 p.m., Jose, her grandmother's boyfriend, decided to go to the store, maybe to get a few more things for the party, and asked if Sofia and the other children wanted to go with him. They each said no, but at the last minute, Sofia changed her mind and decided to go after all. Unbeknownst of this decision change, Jose left, leaving the 4-year-old in the house with her mother, who continued getting Sofia ready, not knowing that Jose had already left. So she helped Sofia get into her Converse shoes and gave her $1 to buy something from the store for herself. Wearing a long-sleeved red shirt, blue overalls, light purple socks, and small gold-hooped earrings, Sofia walked out of the house, fully expecting Jose to be waiting for her to get into the truck. Although it was cold out that night, she wasn't wearing a jacket. I assume that's because the store run would be quick, so there was no need for one. However, Jose ended up being gone for a total of 45 minutes. From what I read, the store was only 5 blocks away. So I'm not sure if it was traffic or if he took his time getting things from the store. But what I do know is that according to Old Farmer's Almanac, the temperature around that time was near 40 degrees and visibility was nearly 10 miles long. It wasn't raining, nor was it snowing, so I'm not really sure why it took so long. Nevertheless, when he came home alone, it quickly became evident that Sofia had not been with him after all. In a panic, the family began frantically looking for her, but after 15 minutes of being unable to find her, they phoned the police. From the very beginning, the police were on it, which is not something I often have the pleasure of saying when doing these episodes. But because of her age and the dropping temperatures, the police acted quickly. Within 3 minutes of being notified of Sofia's disappearance, they were there, searching the family's home, their vehicles, and their yard. They also conducted a neighborhood search that spanned a 3-mile radius. Still believing that Sofia had perhaps wandered off and tried to catch up with Jose by walking to the store herself, they searched the playgrounds, parks, schools, businesses, fields, and vacant lots. The family themselves even went door to door asking all of their neighbors had they seen the little girl, and their efforts may have paid off. A 10-year-old child from the neighborhood came forward and reported that he or she saw Sofia walking towards the end of her driveway, speaking to an unknown man who was dressed in all black. This bit of information shifted the investigation into overdrive, and within hours, an Amber Alert, the first ever in the state of Washington, was issued for Sofia. What was supposed to be a joyous moment for the little girl turned into an all out search, and her birthday came and went. Over the next 3 days, the local police department and FBI joined forces, and over 500 police officers, search dogs, dive teams, and volunteers were out searching. They even had helicopters equipped with sonar and thermal imaging devices searching waterways, vacant/remote areas, and surrounding neighborhoods. City workers were also prompted to search the sewers while the Coast Guard searched the rivers. Even with all of their efforts, finding Sofia, and quickly, was proving to be much harder than originally thought. So it was time to switch gears. Detectives began to question if maybe a family member was involved. Originally from Mexico, what if someone from the family abducted Sofia and took her there? The suggestion was absurd, of course, but could there be some truth to that? Maria didn't want to believe so, but she also knew that Sofia wouldn't have gone anywhere with someone she didn't know. The claim was certainly worth looking into, so with their minds made up, Maria and Ignacia decided to take matters into their own hands. In March, they flew to Guadalajara, then later traveled to Puebla, where they also had family. They spent days tracking down people in Mexico, questioning them, but ultimately came back to the United States, confident that Sofia had not been taken there. So let's back up a minute. Police were heavily considering that someone really close to Sofia was involved, so much so that they questioned Sofia's father, Andres, and even gave him a polygraph test in which he passed. Jose was also questioned and given a polygraph test, which he passed as well, thus eliminating both he and Andres as suspects. Okay, so does anyone else think that polygraph tests shouldn't be used as an interrogation tactic? They can sometimes be wildly inaccurate, and for this same reason can't be used in court. So why would anyone ever be eliminated as a suspect because of it? You'd think, well, maybe it was a sign of the times, but no. Polygraph tests were invented in 1921, and less than 2 years later, in 1923, they were ruled inadmissible in court. I'm really hoping that these two men being eliminated as suspects was based on more than just the results of this test. Either way, the two men were ruled out as possible abductors, and investigators had to move on. Also, in 2005, just 2 years after Sofia went missing, police received a tip from an informant who was hoping to strike a deal, claiming that Sofia had been run over and buried on a farm behind some homes on that same property. The area was later excavated, but nothing of note was discovered, and police once again had to move on. During the course of this investigation, 800 or so tips were followed up on, over 1,200 people were interviewed, and at least 150 sex offenders who were living in the area or right on the outskirts of Kennewick were investigated, researched, or contacted. Police honed in on one registered sex offender in particular because of an eyewitness statement provided by a couple. This couple told investigators that they spotted a white van riding around the neighborhood at the time of Sofia's disappearance, and coincidentally, this man also owned a white van. Police then impounded the van and executed a warrant to search his house, where they were unable to find anything incriminating. Not wanting to give up just yet, this man was also given a polygraph test in which he passed as well, and ultimately he also had to be eliminated as a suspect. In total, 4 homes were searched during this investigation. Out of the four, only 2 of those homes stood out to me. One of the homes belonged to a convicted sex offender, Kevin Ireland. I couldn't find out anything about his crimes, but this piece of crap person called a complete stranger's number and began describing sexually explicit things that he had done to Sofia. Although later determined that he wasn't involved in her disappearance, he was charged and found guilty of telephone harassment. The other home that was searched belonged to the mother of convicted murderer Jeremy Vargas Sagastague. I'm pretty sure I didn't say that right. Anyway, at the time of the search, Jeremy had already been executed by the state and had been dead for about 4 years. His mother claimed that this was done as a way to harass her and her other sons, and honestly, I can't imagine what other reason they would have for searching her home. I mean, maybe they did have their reasons, but whatever they were, it was never stated publicly. I will not go into detail about what Jeremy did to his victims, but I have linked an article that explains in horrifying details exactly what he did. I can't even talk about it, but this man was deeply depraved. Other than what I explained previously, the actions taken by law enforcement brings me to tears because this is how every single case should be treated. The amount of effort, energy, and obviously care that was dedicated to finding this little girl was incredible. But even with all of that, Sofia Juarez remains missing to this day. In the early months of 2021, the Kennewick Police Department and the state of Washington teamed up with a transportation company to display information about Sophia on the side of their trucks as a sort of walking billboard. The police also released new information that was actually given to them back in 2003 when reports of Sophia's disappearance first made airwaves. In an attempt to not tip off the person or persons they were looking for, investigators chose to keep this information confidential. But, and I quote, a highly credible witness stated that they observed a dark, wavy haired, baby faced, light skinned, Hispanic looking male standing approximately 5 foot to 5 foot 2 tall between the ages of 11 and 14 lead Sophia to a waiting van. As this person led her to the vehicle, it was observed that Sophia was crying while the juvenile child laughed. This individual was also said to have unusually large hands for a child of his age. The van in question was described as an older 1970s to 1980s light colored van with no windows. Coincidentally, in the same year that this information was released, a man living in Mexico by the name of Akayaya went viral on TikTok after he interviewed a young woman who bore a striking similarity to Sophia if she were all grown up. This TikTok blew up in such a way that investigators could not ignore it. With permission from the authorities in Mexico, the Kennewick police were able to obtain DNA from the 23-year-old woman to determine if she was indeed the missing child. Unfortunately, tests proved that she was in fact not Sophia, and investigators were once again back at square one. The investigation into Sophia's disappearance is still ongoing, and police haven't given up hope. Sadly, Maria won't be around to see the outcome for herself because in 2007 she died of complications months after giving birth to a son. She died before ever knowing the truth of what happened to her baby girl. I hope and pray that one day this family will get some closure and that Maria can finally rest in peace knowing that Sophia has been brought home. At the time of her disappearance, Sophia had dark brown hair and dark brown eyes. She stood about 3 feet tall and weighed 33 pounds. Her front two teeth were also missing. Both of her ears were pierced, and she had a mole under one of her eyes and a distinguishable birthmark on her lower back. A website has been set up in Sophia's honor where tips and donations can be made. There's currently a $10,000 reward for anyone who can provide credible information that leads to an arrest. Sophia would be 25 years old today. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Sofia Juarez, you can leave a tip here at www.gotokennywick.com/136A/what-happened-to-Sophia. Don't worry, I'll make sure to link this in the show's description. Or you can contact Special Investigator Al Wayner at 509-582-1331 or Kennewick Emergency Dispatch at 509-628-0333. You never know what evil lurks behind you, so be vigilant and don't be afraid to cause a scene. Anything to ensure that you make it home safely. As always, this is #IAM. Be blessed and